New York, New York. I want to wake up in a city with an ambulance, ideally, and find I'm king of the hill, top of the card at a New Japan show that may well have been sabotaged. I'm El Fakador Laurie Blake. This is Chopper Pequeno, and welcome to a WrestleTalk News blast thing.
Bulletin?
Is
that a thing?
I don't know. Ollie's basically done his regular WrestleTalk News video that will go live later today, but he couldn't quite squeeze this interesting little bit of news from the weekend in, so we thought we would come to a live stream and discuss it.
Yeah.
The story is that New Japan have basically been running a little northeastern United States tour called the Fighting Spirit Unleashed Tour.
Such a Japanese name. I love
Started in Boston on Friday, ended in Philadelphia on Sunday without incident. Saturday, New York at the Manhattan Center's Hammerstein Ballroom. The show was supposed to go live. The first bell was supposed to be at 7. They were delayed by 90 minutes because the New York Athletic Commission basically demands that an ambulance has to be outside the building for sporting events at all times.
Yep.
No ambulance showed up for the New Japan show, meaning that they were delayed and massively scrambling around to find an ambulance. Now, that so far, so not sabotagey. So,
Yeah.
maybe they're stuck in traffic. Maybe
Possibly.
something weird has happened. PW Insider were at the event and live updating as things went on. At 7:57, they said, New Japan's Vice President Rocky Romero has just come out and apologized to the crowd for technical issues. They tossed T-shirts to the crowd. Romero asked the fans to bear with them and promised to rock NYC with tonight's show. Based on numerous sources, here's the problem. The ambulance company that the Hammerstein Ballroom uses for all of their events and used last night for a concert did not show up as scheduled. The belief originally was that the ambulance was stuck in traffic, but when the venue called the ambulance company to check up on their status, they were told that the ambulance company received a phone call that morning telling them tonight's show was cancelled and therefore they were not needed and were now no longer available.
Oh, that is unfortunate.
Yeah.
I mean, that could just be someone being really inept at their job.
It could be.
It could just be someone from New Japan or something just going, oh, I heard tonight's show is cancelled, better call the ambulance company. And no such thing happened. The show wasn't cancelled. It was sold out, in fact. There was no hint of it being cancelled. But it also seems weird that the ambulance company also didn't think to check that the show was cancelled.
Well, so then this led to a sort of Betty Hill farce of ambulances turning up and going away again and it never quite working out. So PW Insider said that someone involved in the show was able to scramble and get a FDNY ambulance to come to the show, which isn't the private one. And they offered to help and remain until the show could get another ambulance to take their place so that New Japan could start holding matches. However, they were told that New York state rules would not allow that, and everyone was working on getting another ambulance there because the commission does not allow matches to take place unless there are EMTs with an ambulance present at the venue. As you can imagine, everyone working the show is beyond stress at the moment. So kind of the point there was the FDNY ambulances, if they showed up, if there was an emergency elsewhere, they would have to leave, and therefore the show would have to stop. And obviously that would mean in the middle of matches and stuff. So the reason they use a private company is so that the ambulance can be there for the duration of the show.
Exactly.
This then led to a series of events where basically at one point they had 2 ambulances there to sort of be like, if one has to go, then we've still got one. 2 more turned up, so they had 4 ambulances and a complete overabundance of ambulances. They sent 2 away, kept 2, and then they were like, okay, we're going to go we're going to start the show. And I think this was like at 8. They said they were ready to start the show. And then it was like, you have to take the ambulances around the back of the building and the stretchers have to be inside.
Yep.
Before you're allowed to start. So eventually the show, I think, got underway at 8:30.
Yes.
An hour and a half after it was scheduled to go live. And it then lasted so it was meant to also then finish at 11. So even with rushing, they overran and incurred all of the costs associated with overrunning and all that kind of stuff because there's a bunch of New York rules related to venues and that kind of thing.
Yeah. But not only that as well, they even put extra guidelines in place for when they were wrestling. So then they said, while the opening video package was being played to start the event off, the ambulances were still round the front, and they had to get them round to the back and have the stretchers out. And they also said, right, no chairs, no tables, no blood, no fighting on the outside, no whipping into the barricades. So
No
it's
blading, yeah.
No blading. It's like, so what is New Japan?
No fun!
No fun at all. I mean, it's very safe, and I understand completely why they're doing it.
This is the first
But
time when
it
a
is-
referee says, let's have a good, clean contest. They were like, no, I mean it.
No, seriously.
Yes.
Please don't screw this up. So even when they got the show going, they still had very strict guidelines of how to wrestle in the show. But
Do you think they just called him Switch Jay White for the show?
absolutely zero blading. He's just switched now. So it sounds like a whole bunch of stress and a big kerfuffle at the show. And as I said before, it could just be an honest mistake. Something just went wrong and they just scrambled to try and get it all sorted. However, let's get a tinfoil hats on for a second here, because there's theories running around the interwebs that this may have been a targeted sabotage for the New Japan show. Now, if you didn't know, there's kind of a war going on in wrestling right now. I don't know if you heard, between various companies, who'd have thunk it. However, there's some tweets going around. So, a user by the name of Lauderdale11 just put out saying, so the ambulance company that works every event at the Hammerstein Ballroom gets a random early morning call saying that a sold out event that same night is cancelled, and they don't even double check to make sure it's legit before reassigning their crew. That's a 6-figure mistake. Sounds a little off.
Yeah.
And it kind of does.
It really does.
It sounds very, very off.
Well, this is the thing. So, like, to make that call, you have to be aware of the private company they use to hire ambulances. Like, if you're from outside, and then you have to be aware that they use that for everything, including concerts, sporting events, anything that goes on at the ballroom that requires there to be an ambulance outside.
Yep.
They would use that company. So that probably suggests that the list of suspects to be Poirot for a second. About there's a list of suspects.
twirl your moustache around
I'll
to be
just twirl
Poirot,
twirl my moustache around. But it suggests that the you would have to have working knowledge of the venue and probably of putting on an event there in the first place.
Exactly. And the Hammerstein Ballroom, of course, is a very famous wrestling venue. It's quite well-renowned wrestling hub, essentially. So there's quite a few people that have run wrestling events there before, and you would have to know that they run that specific ambulance company at every show. On top of this as well, with the theories of sabotage circling the internet, at David Bix on Twitter just said, so whoever sabotaged the New Japan show would have to be someone who knew that the Manhattan Center uses the same ambulance company for all events, regardless of if they're wrestling, concerts, kickboxing, etc. So yeah, it's just building on top of that, saying that it doesn't matter what event they're using, it's the same ambulance company, and someone needs to know that. This can't be an act of just some random fan trying to screw with New Japan, because they wouldn't have that working knowledge of that ambulance company.
Got the number as well.
Yeah, and the cream of the crop, I guess the icing on the cake of this one, a tweet from @_Akuma said, the sad reality is that this is only the beginning. Every major wrestling company that does business in the US is fighting a war on multiple fronts, and it's going to get really ugly. This is kind of a throwback, I guess, to like the Monday Night Wars, when they had tons and tons of underhanded tactics and things to try and throw off their opponents, you know, with like Bischoff and people coming out and spoiling the WWF's results and things like that from back in the day. Really like nasty stuff to try and drive the other company out of business. This is kind of out of that playbook. It's kind of a really underhanded way to try and screw over another show.
If it is sabotage.
If it is sabotage, correct.
Which it might not be.
Which, again, this is complete speculation, complete conspiracy theories with our tinfoil hats on. But it does seem like that the evidence is kind of pointing that direction. There's a lot of credence to these conspiracy theories, unlike a lot of other ones.
So the only thing I would add in to temper this is that, like, you know, sometimes when you phone a delivery company and you're like, where's my parcel gone? And they were like, oh, somebody didn't give me the right address. And then you finally track down the parcel. and your address is written perfectly on it. And it was like, or they'd just put the "I'm not in" through the door.
Yeah,
and you're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I was in.
Yeah.
You didn't ring the bell.
You didn't knock.
Sometimes when you phone people to complain about something in a bit of a tiz, because obviously you wanted your parcel, or you're putting on a wrestling show in front of thousands of people, and an ambulance isn't there, and they're saying you can't start. Sometimes people on the phone just say stuff.
Yeah,
You know, like, you know what I mean?
It's also so
Sometimes
true,
people just
yeah.
say, like, well, we got a call earlier today. Or maybe the person on the phone got a call about a different event that got cancelled and they got confused and they wiped it out. Like, it does seem a little bit, you know, like there's probably some vetting of layers there, like in the sense that, like, if you did ring up, you would have to know who the New Japan staff were, potentially who had booked the thing, like to say, like, oh, well, this person told me it's in this person's name, it's for this event, the event's been cancelled, so if you can cancel the thing, that would be fine. Because otherwise you would think they would check. They wouldn't just take a call from some rando being like, like ambulances is one of those things I would say probably check your facts before you just cancel the ambulance, because they're quite important.
Yeah, they are an ambulance after all. They do have quite an important role.
Are you sure?
Can we just double check this real quick? Yeah, so there's multiple different interpretations of this, and it's quite interesting to talk about. I don't really know where I fall on this one, because it genuinely could be just an honest mistake. Well, it's very, very possible, like you said, that someone's just called up for the wrong event, or got the wrong date, or the wrong name, or the ambulance company like double booked themselves, or whatever it is. There's so many possibilities for it.
I think it's just a strange confluence of like the time, the
Exactly,
season
yeah.
of wrestling that we're having, where you know. Live shows are all starting this week. All the big moves are happening this week, and New Japan is in America having this show, and it suddenly seems like, oh, you're now encroaching on this turf when we've got a very busy week, everyone. You know, but then it's one of those things where even people like Dave Meltzer don't necessarily know what's going on. Dave Meltzer didn't rule out Sabotage as one of the stories, but he said that his sources had told him 3 completely different stories. One of which
that backs it up.
One of which was just that New Japan didn't understand some of the regulations.
I mean, I guess there's some credence to that, because obviously, primarily Japanese stuff, when they come over to US, is different jurisdictions, different legislations. However, they have run shows in USA before, plenty of them, so you'd think they'd know.
Well, they did Madison Square Garden.
They did MSG,
Yeah, with Ring of Honor
exactly
this year.
So, like, you'd think that they
Unless
know.
Ring of Honor booked all of that and didn't tell New Japan what the rules were for booking it. But I imagine...
I mean, they've run other US shows.
Yeah.
And I think the legislations for all those shows would be pretty similar for most of them. So, like, I don't know. I don't buy that one. I think
but
they
it is
know.
one of the things you would, if you were covering up the fact that you'd made a stunning boo-boo, that you would say, like, well, I rang them and someone rang them and said they'd cancelled it.
Yeah, that's
true. And then
true.
just... knock that ball up for everyone else to take a swing out on the internet and be like, well, we could speculate until we're done.
Because out of this, no one is targeting New Japan. And it could just be entirely New Japan's fault. And someone's just made an error and screwed everything up.
But this is much more exciting.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
This makes a much better thumbnail.
Yeah, exactly.
So...
I don't know. I just wonder if we're going to, like, are we going to go into a new age of Monday Night Wars? Tactics and subterfuge from all the big wrestling promotions in the world. Yeah. Or was it someone else? Or was it someone at the concert the night before who was like, well, I left my bag there, so I'm trying to get the event cancelled so I can go back and get the bag.
Get my bag.
Was it Britney? I don't know.
Who knows? Yeah. There's so many different possibilities. Don't know where to fall. If you're watching this on Catch Up Not Live, leave us a comment. Let us know what you thought happened, because... Cool, we'd like to hear some theories, if there's any ones that we haven't covered, because I'm sure there are some.
I want the strangest, weirdest lizards from the moon theories.
Please, yeah.
Lizards from the moon who didn't land there. That's what I want.
It's perfect, yeah. It's a flawless plan. Anywho.
Yeah. Well, thank you for watching. That is all we have time for discussing this story. If you are watching on Catch Up, you can click the videos that have just appeared on the desk right now to watch more awesome WrestleTalk things. And if you haven't already, subscribe to WrestleTalk, because we will be pushing that this month.
Yes, we
Big
are.
styly. We want more people to watch more wrestling stuff, because it's a good time to do it. I've been Il Faker, Laurie Blake. This has been Chopper Pete Quinnell, and that we're wrestling.